Scouts Victoria respectfully acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Victoria where our activities take place today. We pay our respects to elders both past, present and emerging, and continue to recognise and embrace the important continuous history and connection to land and community of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people.
Welcome to the Scout Quest. I'm Xander from First City of Camberwell, and today we're celebrating the end of Term 3. Today's special guest is Alan from Minibeast Wildlife. As Scouts, we spend a lot of time outdoors, and we know that our world can be ruled by mini-beasts, a group of animals known as invertebrates. We will get up close to some of Australia's most incredible invertebrates. We're going on a myth-busting journey to find out more about these amazing creatures. I'm excited to introduce Alan. Hi, Alan, and welcome to the Scout Quest.
Hi, Xander. It's great to be here. How are you going?
I'm good. I'm really excited to learn more about these incredible animals. Shall we get started?
We certainly shall. Can't wait to start. Okay, well, thanks for having me along. It's great to be doing this for Scouts Victoria because I was actually a scout when I was living in Victoria many, many years ago. Went right through to Venturers and actually got my Queen Scout Award. So it's a great organisation and I had a ball and very enjoyable. Okay, so today you're coming to us here at Minibeast Wildlife headquarters in far north Queensland, so a fair way away from where most of you are at the moment. And of course, we're talking to you about Minibeast, and as Xander said, they are a group of animals we call invertebrates. Now, invertebrates are very different than we are, and one of the biggest differences is something that they actually don't have, and that is a backbone, or what we call a vertebrate. So invertebrates means no backbone. So we have bones through our bodies, inside us, and soft skin on the outside. Well, these animals are very different. It's almost the other way around. So to grow, one of the biggest things they have to go through is shedding their outside skeleton, and that's a thing we call the exoskeleton. And some of you may have seen invertebrate exoskeletons around. Now, I've got a special little bug camera here that we can look at things up close. And some of you may be familiar with one of these, and that is a cicada exoskeleton. And cicadas come out of the ground to develop to the adult stage. And we can see it's split open there, and that's where the animal came out of its old skeleton to get larger. So it's grown and it developed to the stage where it has wings. Here's another one here. This is the outside skeleton to a praying mantis. So you can see all the body parts are there. It's just the outer skeleton. And when it came out of this, it's bigger too. Now, a lot of people see these sort of things around the garage, around the shed. So some of you might have these hanging around the house right at the very moment. And this is often believed to be a dead spider. It is actually not a dead spider. It's the exoskeleton to a huntsman spider. So have you ever seen one of these around, especially when it's got the legs all up in an area like, or in sticking straight up like that? It's more likely to be an exoskeleton rather than a dead spider, because dead spiders usually get gobbled up by something else. But the exoskeleton you can see is hollow there. You can see straight through the spider's eyes where it was looking out from. So it's actually come out of this exoskeleton. It's come out all rubbery and soft, hung down below it, hardened its new skeleton up, and then gone about its business. So if you find one of these, you'll know you've got a huntsman living around your garage, but it's bigger. I guess some of you probably won't want to know that. So it's kind of like us wearing a suit of armor and growing periodically, jumping out of that armor and getting bigger. Okay, now the first group of animals that we're going to look at today are the insects. So they're a group of invertebrates that have some special features. They have 6 legs. They typically have 3 body parts, but sometimes it's a bit hard to tell where one part begins and the other ends, and normally have some form of antennae at the top of the head. And the first one we're going to have a look at is this amazing animal called a spiny leaf insect. These are incredible stick-like insects. Okay, so they're relatives to the stick insects. They hang upside down in trees. They look a little bit like a scorpion up this way, but there's no sting on the tail. What they're actually trying to do is look like a dead leaf and hide in the trees so other animals can't see them. And you can see it right now starting to wobble. See that wobble going on? That's not me shaking. That's the insect using its camouflage. Now, it has three forms of camouflage, really. It has the color, which blends in with the dead, dry leaves, has the shapes, and it has the behavior. So insects' camouflage can be what they do just as much as what they look like. So if you've got great camouflage, you can easily blow it by just walking off. So hungry birds will be sitting in the tree looking really closely for a meal. So if you're walking, you've got to pretend you're a leaf blowing. So every step these insects take, they're swaying back and forth and they're taking a step to hide it. Let's have a close look at this one. Have a look at this animal. It's just amazing. It's got spiky parts all over its body. It's got these leafy flanges on its legs, and it's got these amazing toes. Okay, so one of the things about wild animals is they're real. Oh, he's jumping on the camera. Well, she is. They've got amazing adaptations to help them do what they need to do in the wild. And in this case, we're going to have a look at its feet. Now, when we're out doing various activities, if you're going out bushwalking, you're going to wear hiking boots. Playing sport on an oval, you might wear football boots with stops. We use the right kind of footwear for the activity. In this case, they're a climber, so they have the right kind of feet to help themselves climb. Now, if we look closely at these feet, you can see it there hanging onto my finger. You can see two claws, and in between those claws, it has a little gripping pad. So they hang on really, really well. So when the wind blows, these animals have no trouble hanging onto the tree. And even when we get cyclones up here, they're pretty good at holding on and not falling out. So that's the spiny leaf insect. 3 body parts, 6 legs, head, thorax here, and this long part at the back is called the abdomen. I'll pop that one back, and I've got another amazing one to show you. This is one of my favorites. This is an amazing animal called the Australian leaf insect. Looks just like a live leaf. Look at that. Incredible. And again, it's wobbling, pretending that it's being blown in the wind, so that a hungry predator, a bird, is not going to see it very easily. Look at the abdomen. It's flat, looks like a leaf. It's even got the markings that leaves have on them. You can see the little head there with stubby antennae. It's a bit hard to get still because of wobbling around so much. It's got the same kind of toes as the other animal had, as the spiny leaf insect, except you can imagine this one's living on a different kind of tree. So this one wants to blend in with live green leaves. And they're so hard to see that even the ones that we have here in our collection in captivity, and we breed lots of them, it's very hard to spot them. Okay, so we have to go through and count them when we're looking for these and to change their leaves over, because we have to give them fresh leaves to eat. In fact, I didn't say that, that's what these guys eat. So a little bit like a caterpillar, they line themselves up with the edge of the leaf and eat down that way. Now I'll pop this one back. Now, one thing I meant to say right at the beginning is we've got a special competition going today. And the giveaway is the spiny leaf insect that I showed you first, or one of the giveaways, and the kit, the Bugs Alive book to know how to look after them, an enclosure that pops up to look after them there. And the second prize, we've also got a Minibeast book that I wrote myself, and it's got all sorts of wonderful photographs in there of different mini beasts and stories about how important these animals are. So to enter that, all you need to do is write your group's name in the chat window, and that'll be looked at over the weekend, and the winners will be announced on social media next week, and we'll send those prizes out to you. Okay, now we're going to have a look at one more insect here that's a relative to the last two, and this is a monster. This is a gargantuan stick insect, and believe it or not, this is just a youngster. This one's going to grow almost to the length of my arm. It's going to get simply massive. It's actually the biggest stick insect in Australia, and it's close to the biggest species in the world. There's only a few millimeters in it. The biggest one we've had here was 58 centimeters long. That is just simply huge. But even though they're so big, they're still really hard to see. So in the forest, they blend in with the twigs and the branches. Rather than the leaves at the tip, they'll hang amongst the branches and they'll just sit really, really still. And they'll often stick their legs out in forks just to look like they're a twig. And they're really impossible to find. We've only actually found one in 10 years of looking. Unfortunately, that one laid lots of eggs for us when we collected her, and we actually rescued her off a bird that was eating her. But we've got lots of babies now, so we're growing lots of these up. So that is the massive gargantuan stick insect. Really the king of the stick insects in the Australian bug world. There we go. I'll pop that one back. All right. Now, the animals we've had a look at so far are herbivores. They're plant eaters, but we're going to move on to a group of insects that eat other insects now. Let's have a look what we've got here. Okay. Now, this one has camouflage kind of like the stick insect, but it is what we call a praying mantis. Now, I'll see if I can get it onto this hand so we can have a look at the bug camera. Here we go. Here we go. Praying mantis. Now, the big difference already we can see is that front leg is covered in spikes, and that's what we call a raptorial leg. And praying mantises use those front legs to catch their prey. They also have incredible eyesight. You can see how big those eyes are. They need to see really well. The stick insects don't need to see that well because they just sit on the leaves and they can smell the leaves with their antennae and know what they need to eat. This guy needs to be able to spot its food. Oh, he just turned around and looked at me. There you go. They need to be able to spot their food and reach out and grab it very quickly. So this one's gone for a bit of a jump. Pick it back up. So this is what we call a grass mantis, and it blends into tall, dry grass. Some mantids are green. Some mantids in other countries can be pink and blend in with flowers. We're going to have a look at one now that we call a rainbow mantis, and we're going to see if it's hungry. So let's switch on to our bug cam, and let's have a look at our rainbow mantis. Now, they get their name rainbow mantis because they've got a colourful face and colourful arms. You can see that purple there in the front arm there. Now, if she sits down, we're going to offer her a cricket, and let's hope that we can get to see it. Let's have a look. Look at that face looking at us. There we go. In we come. Right. Now bear with us for a moment because we'll see if she wants to eat this cricket. In we come. Look at that face. It's like an alien. And in Hollywood, they actually model a lot of aliens off bugs and invertebrates because they look so cool. So they've got all these really weird features. She doesn't look like she's too interested in this cricket. Got all these really weird, strange features that make them look very different than us. And of course, those great big eyes basically allow them to be able to see their food, judge the distance, and be able to grab accurately what they're eating. They'll eat flies, all sorts of other bugs, including each other. So if you're a praying mantis, you don't want to necessarily meet another praying mantis because it might eat you. All right, she's gobbling up that cricket now. We'll get right in close and let's have a look at what she's doing. Oh, did she just drop it? Ah, she mightn't be all that hungry, this one. You know that exoskeleton I showed you right at the beginning? That's hers. She molted, shed her skin just last week. Now she's much bigger and she's got one more stage. Look at her try to reach the camera. She's got one more stage to go until she develops her wings. And once she has wings, that's the end of her growth. Look at that. You can see her clean. They're like cats, really. Very clean animals, always cleaning themselves. And you can see those daggers on the end of her legs. So if she grabs something, it's staying grabbed. They're not going to get away very easily. Look at the antennae flicking. She smells with those. And there's those big front legs. She just can't reach the camera. Look at that. That's amazing. All righty. Okay, we're going to move on to another animal now. This one is still an insect, but very different than the praying mantises. It is actually the biggest species of its kind in the world. Okay, and it lives right here in northern Australia. And it is this animal, the giant burrowing cockroach. It's an amazing creature. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of you out there going, yuck, cockroach. And a lot of people say that. And that's a bit of a myth that cockroaches are dirty, horrible animals, because they aren't. In Australia, we have about 400 or so types of native cockroaches, 400 species. None of those tend to come in our house. We have about 6 different types that come in, and they're introduced species. And they're the pest ones we see running around our kitchen cupboards and things like that. This one lives in the Australian forest, in the bush, and it eats one thing, and that is this: dry, dead gum leaves. And that is all it eats. And it gobbles up those leaves and turns them into something very special, and that is cockroach poo that goes back into the soil and helps the forest grow. Now, cockroaches like this one don't scurry around up and down walls. They are burrowing animals. They dig holes under the ground, and this cockroach can dig a burrow about 1 meter in depth. And if we stretch that tunnel out, it would be can be up to about 7 meters long. That's enormous. And talking about footwear, we looked at the mantis, at the stick insect earlier. Let's see the footwear of this guy. You can see those great big digging feet. So they use them to dig their way through the really hard soils. You can see how it's pushing on my finger there. And they can dig into ground that's really hard for us to dig into. It's amazing. And then they use their head like a bulldozer. Look at that. Or they're above their head, they've got a shell there called a pronotum, which they use to push their way through the soil. And they're amazing. And they are a little bit like wombats too. So when they burrow, they go down the tunnel, but if something tries to come back behind them, just like a wombat does, they block the tunnel with their back end and push up. And this is really tough and hard, so they can stop any intruder, so lizards or things like that, baby goannas climbing down the tunnel to try to eat them. So that's the giant burrowing cockroach. And another amazing thing about the giant burrowing cockroach is that they actually give birth to live young. They don't lay eggs, and they look after their babies for up to a year, which is amazing too. So mum and dad cockroach will live together in a burrow. They have their babies, and they'll go up to the surface, collect the leaves, take them back down underneath, and break them up for the youngsters. Now, we do a lot of work with film crews at Minibeast Wildlife here, and we were filming these with David Attenborough a couple of years ago, and we were filming them going underground and looking after their babies. So if you've ever seen the show called Micro Monsters with David Attenborough, they're our burrowing cockroaches on that program. Okay, we'll pop that one away. Right, now we're going to go underwater and have a look at a water bug. And again, this is a whopper. This is one of the biggest types of water bugs in Australia and in the world. This is a giant water bug you can see right there. And I'll bring him up to the bug cam as well. Here we go. Now, giant water bugs are also predators. This one's cleaning itself at the moment. I'll just focus that camera a little bit better. There we go. Look at that. You can see those big eyes and those front legs. And one thing that tells us is that they're a predator, a little bit like an underwater praying mantis. But they don't have gills like a fish, so to breathe, they have to go up to the surface. And it's just about to do it now, I think. There we go. See right on the top there? A little snorkel came out of its bottom. So that's what we call the siphon, and it sticks that up to the surface to get air so that it can breathe. And otherwise, it sits underwater like a praying mantis, very still, waiting for things to come close to it. And if something does, it grabs it and then it injects it with a venom. So underneath this animal, it has a needle mouth part. You can just see there under the head. So that's sticking out under its head there. So that needle digs into its prey, injects venom, then it sucks an insect milkshake basically back out into its own tummy. These things are even big enough to catch small fish. I've seen them catch fairly big yabbies and also lots of tadpoles. So they're amazing predators, and they live in swamps and ponds up here in northern Australia. Amazing invertebrates. All right, speaking of amazing invertebrates, we're moving on to one of the jewels of the bug world. This is a group of insects that pretty much rule. This is a beetle. I'll go to the smaller camera. This is actually what we call a rainbow stag beetle. Look at the colors of that. It's like jewelry. And rainbow stags are named, obviously, you can see those colors in the elytra, which is the back here. Now, elytra are actually specialized hard wings. So beetles technically have 4 wings, 2 hard ones and underneath 2 soft ones. So it kind of makes them real life transformers. So what they do if they need to fly is these outer wings just open up, and then those soft wings pop out and up they go, and off they go. But they can do things a lot of other insects can't. So things like butterflies and dragonflies, they can't go down on the ground and crawl around because they damage their wings. But beetles like this one can burrow into the ground, or as these guys do, into wood to lay their eggs, and it doesn't harm their wings at all. So they're really amazing insects, and beetles are one of the most successful types of insects on the planet. There's a lot of species of beetles, and this is actually one of the most spectacular in the whole world in terms of its color. There you go. And this is a male, and we can tell because he has those big mandibles at the front. They're actually not that large. Some stag beetles have even bigger mandibles than this guy, but they use them to fight for their girlfriends. So you'll get beetles on a log trying to fight each other. They'll just wrestle with these mandibles, and the biggest beetle will grab the other one and toss the other one off the log and get to mate with the females. So that's why stag beetles have those big mandibles. Okay, right. What we're going to do now is step up the legs. So we've had a good look at insects. We've seen 6 legs. Now we're going to add 2, and we're going to have a look at a group of animals called arachnids. And some of you might be familiar with that name, and yes, it does include the spiders. In fact, spiders are probably one of the most well-known animals in the arachnid group. Now let's see who wants to come out to see us today. All right, here we go. And this is Charlotte, and Charlotte is a golden orb weaving spider. So when we think of spiders, a lot of people think of those webs, those classic big round, I'm all hooked up with silk here, big round web with lots of spokes in it, which we call an orb web. So orb weaving spiders make their webs to catch flying insects. So basically they're setting up a trap that's going to be in a space where insects are flying through. Orb weavers have pretty poor eyesight actually. So what they're doing is they're kind of like they're fishing. So they're sitting there in the middle of the web, feeling all those lines, waiting for something to get trapped so they can feel it. So there's the face of our big golden orb weaver. So they're walking around. Everywhere she goes, she's actually leaving a line of silk. You probably can't see it, but it's coming out of her spinnerets, which are the special little organs on the back end of her abdomen. And that's where the silk comes from. So all over me, she's leaving silk. So I'm getting wrapped right up now. Okay, back to the main camera there. So these are one of the biggest orb weaving spiders in Australia. But what we're going to have a look at now is one that has a web set up. We'll pop her back in there. Now you might be wondering why I'm handling a spider. And you might have heard that spiders are venomous and they're dangerous to us. But out of somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 species of spiders in Australia, we only have a couple that are venomous enough to cause us any problems. And the golden orb weaver isn't one of them. She has big fangs. If she wanted to bite me, if I pinched her or really hurt her, she might bite, but her venom's so mild, I just get a little red mark. No danger whatsoever in doing what I just did. Now we're going to flick across to an Orb Weaver apparently hanging in space. This is a St. Andrew's cross spider. Now she gets that name because of the way she holds her legs in a cross, and she also will put a cross in the web made of white silk. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have that at the moment. Now, we're going to try something pretty difficult. We're going to try to feed her a fly. Now, I'm going to toss the fly into the web. I'm going to hopefully get it somewhere where you can see it. And Deanna, my assistant here, is going to try to keep the camera on it. So let's see if this works. Whoa, almost. Almost. I'm just trying to recatch the fly, which is a bit tricky. Okay, take two. There we go. There she goes. She's got the fly and she's wrapping it up. You can see her spinnerets there. How amazing is that? So she's just paused for a moment, got this fly half wrapped, and she'll go back to it in a moment. Let's wait and see what she does. Now, out of her spinnerets, the web is like a bandage. It comes out all thick, not a thin cable. So when she wraps, here she goes. She's going to keep going and she'll spin it round and around in circles, hopefully in a moment for us. No, she's wrapped it so quickly, she's decided to go up to the middle of the web and wait. So I'll go back down to that fly, and we'll zoom right in on it. We'll see, she probably did it so quickly we hardly noticed it. Let's see if I can get right in close to that fly. Already, yep, completely wrapped up in silk. Sorry, it's a bit hard to hold that camera really steady. Now, if she comes back to it, we might come back and have another look at her, but let's just zoom back out to our other camera for a moment. So what she's done, you can see how small she is sitting there, and I've got a fly in my nose. So there's the fly. What she's done is wrap it up, and she'll basically come back to eat that later. She can't leave it too long, because spiders can only eat liquid food. So what she has to do is inject her venom and digestive juices, turn that fly into a soupy material and suck it back up. Now, if she leaves the fly in the web too long, it dries out and there's no longer any liquids in there for her to eat. So spiders can't eat solid food. They must mash up and squeeze their prey dry, suck out the juices, and then they leave a little ball of garbage behind, which is usually the spines and all the hard bits of the insect exoskeleton they can't digest. So most of their digestion is done on the outside, not in the inside. All right, now we have another spider. I'm doing some tricky ones because this is one of my little friends, and it's a different kind of hunter, this one. Let's see how you go. We won't jump. We are jumping. Don't go up on my head because I won't be able to get you back. Okay, this is a huntsman spider. Now, huntsman spiders aren't web builders in terms of they don't build a web trap. They actually use silk to create egg sacs to wrap their eggs with, to make their homes under the bark of trees, but their hunting is done by simply running at their prey and grabbing it. Let's have a close look at this one. Let's zoom across here to the camera. Here we are. There she is. Now, hunting spiders need better eyesight. Most spiders have 8 eyes, and you can see that she's got 8. See a row on the front of the head, and she has a row on the top of her head. But what is even more important are these hairy legs. Okay, hairs all over the legs. Now, they're really important because the spider can use them to help it hunt at night in complete darkness. So she doesn't actually need to see her prey moving. She can feel it. If a moth flies past her, if she was sitting here like this at night time hunting and a moth flew past here, she'd be able to leap out and grab it even if she couldn't see it, because those hairs twitch because of the moth's wing beats moving in the air, and she can tell exactly where that moth is and how to jump on it. So huntsmen eat moths, cockroaches, all sorts of things. And if this looks a little bit different to your huntsman that you get in your house, because most people do get them inside from time to time, it's because there's around about 200 different species of huntsman spider living in Australia. This one we call the giant banded huntsman spider because of the banding on the legs here. So she had bands all up and down there. We have one up here we call the tiger huntsman. that I couldn't bring out of my hand today because it jumps like crazy, and it's colored like a tiger. And it's a new species we discovered here in the rainforest not that long ago. So there's still spiders being discovered here in Australia. And that's why I said before, there's about 5,000 to 10,000 species, because we don't actually know how many species of spiders there are in Australia. I also said there's only a couple that are dangerous. So if you want to have a guess at which ones they are, pop that down in the comments. Say, I think the dangerous species are, and we'll talk about that later on. Oh, our St Andrews cross spider is back on the set here because she's now approaching her fly. Let's see what she's doing. Here we go. She's going to have a feed. Look at that. She's wrapping it up, and what she's doing now is actually putting those digestive juices all over that fly. Maybe I can hold that still. No, there we go. There you go. And she's actually, we can't see from this angle, but she's put her fangs into that and she's pumped it full of venom. Well, here she goes. She's going to do some more wrapping. Look at that. There you go. Spinning it around, wrapping it up, making sure it's nice and secure, and she'll snack on that throughout the day. There you go. All right. Excellent. All righty. Now, we've looked at spiders that roam around, such as the huntsman, and catch their food that way. We've looked at web builders. Another group are ambush hunters, and these are spiders that tend to live in the ground in burrows. And one of the most well-known of those is this big guy here, and this is an Australian tarantula. Look at the size of that one. This is one of our big pregnant females. She's going to lay eggs shortly. These are massive spiders, and believe it or not, Australia's tarantulas are much smaller than those overseas. So they can get really, really big over there. Hairy legs, which help them the same way as the huntsman's hairs do. One thing we can see really clearly on the tarantula is right there on the abdomen. See the spinnerets? I'm trying to get the light right. But you can see those two, what looks like a tail. And people worry about these, thinking that there's some kind of sting, but that's just like soft little fingers that the spider uses to put the silk on wherever it wants it to go. In the case of this one, tarantulas live in holes in the ground. So they dig a hole down underneath, maybe about 30 or 40 centimeters down. They wrap that hole in silk, or the tunnel in silk, and then at night time they creep up and stick their front legs out the tunnel and just wait for prey to walk past. Now, if an insect, even another spider, or in the case of this giant tarantula here, could even be a small lizard such as a gecko or a frog, something like that walks past, they just pounce on it and then drag it straight down the burrow. Now, if we walk past, it's a different story. So you're not going to be walking through the bush with your feet and expect to be attacked by a tarantula. If they feel us walking past, even if we had bare feet, they're not about to come launching out and grab us by the big toe. They feel these massive vibrations and they run to the bottom of the burrow. They think Godzilla's up on the surface. So they are actually far more scared of us than we are of them. Now, some people may be thinking right now, that's very hard to believe, but it's actually true. We are much bigger than spiders, so they want to keep out of our way. We also have another spider here that might feed for us this afternoon. And this is one you might encounter when you're out doing camps. Now, if anyone has ever used a torch at night, or a headlamp, or put a torch up to your eye level and looked around in the bush, you might have noticed pinpricks of light from the ground, usually about a bluey silver color. And that's usually the eyes of a wolf spider. Now, we've got a wolf spider here that we're going to show you. Their eyes are very big for the size of the spider, and they're very reflective. I'll just back the camera. There we go. We can see the eyes really well there. Now, they have 8 eyes, 6 looking forward, and 2 on the back of their head so they can see behind them. Now, we'll zoom out a little bit, and we're going to see if we pop a cricket into this enclosure, what happens. I'd like to thank the crickets for volunteering today. Let me just find a live cricket, because it has to be live for the wolf spider to be interested in it. Here we go. All right, we'll drop that cricket in there. see what happens. Oh, look at that. There we go. That was fast, and they have to be fast. We might come down on the angle now and we'll zoom right in on its face, or no, go around the other side. Now, wolf spiders have, here we go, we'll zoom right in if we can. It's going to play hard to get. Might come down on the top. Wolf spiders have big fangs, and they just simply grab their prey like that. They don't use web to wrap it up, and they don't use web as a trap. So it's a matter of just running really fast and grabbing it. Maybe we come down on this side now. Let's see. We can see it close up. There we go. Just trying to focus there for you. Come right in on the glass if we can. There we go. Look at that. You can actually see the fangs working. See them digging right in there? Look at that. So you can see those 6 eyes, 2 great big ones like headlights, and under those eyes there's 4 more smaller ones, and then 2 large eyes on the back of the head. So when you're shining a torch around at night in the forest, that's those big eyes that reflect back to you. So again, a wandering hunter, but they actually ambush prey from holes as well. So they live in burrows, a little bit like tarantulas at times. But that's the wolf spider. So next time you're out camping, have a look around the campsite, because you're bound to find wolf spiders. So you might get to see them hunting and catching their prey, which is fascinating to watch. And you'll be surprised at how many are around. Okay, now we'll move on to another group of arachnids. Now, I mentioned before that spiders are the most well-known of the arachnids. Now, this group also includes some other 8-legged creatures, and I've got one of those right here, and it is a scorpion. I'll just hold that one right up near the camera there. Okay, there you go. Now, this is a rainforest scorpion, which is one of the largest species in... Oh, there you go. We'll get him back in a moment. One of the largest species of scorpions in Australia. Now, we have many different species, some with really big claws and some with really tiny claws. Typically, the ones with the big claws use venom less, so they tend to crush their prey with their claws and use the sting as a last resort. Some, however, have small claws and a fairly big sting, so they use venom more. We don't have any deadly scorpions in Australia, so you don't need to be worried about having anything that stings you and really harms you. They will hurt, the venom can hurt, but it's not going to do us any major damage. Okay, and we've got this one back. I might just see this time if I can pop it on my hand. That's better. And I'll pop it in front of the camera for you down here. Here we are. So that's why I'm happy enough to show you this on my hand, because they're not deadly. Now, scorpions' claws, you can see, are a little bit like you might think a yabby or crab's claws work. Very similar. They use their claws to grab and crush things. And that sting on the tail there, if I can get an angle on that, there you go. And you can see there's hairs around that sting as well, which work much the same way as the hairs on the spiders that we talked about. So those hairs can tell the scorpion exactly where things are, and a little bit too like a cat's whiskers. So when they're using their sting, those hairs can tell it when it's close to another object and ready to sting it. And they don't actually just thrash their sting around. So scorpions are whack, whack, whack. They don't tend to do that most of the time. When they're catching their prey, they tend to use their sting almost surgically, like giving an injection. They feel for a soft point and do that. Now, one amazing thing about scorpions is their exoskeleton reacts really weirdly to UV light. And scientists don't really know why that is, but we know it happens. Now, I've got a UV torch here, which gives out a purplish light. Now, in the forest at night, if I walk around and shine this around, I tend not to see much if I shine a spot on a spider, but if I shine it on a scorpion, they glow green. Now, I might just try to flick over to the other camera. Scorpion's trying to find its way between my fingers here and hide, but we'll just see if I can get it onto that other camera. Look at that. And that's what we call fluorescing. So if you happen to be out and about, if you get yourself one of these UV torches next time you go camping, you might actually find some scorpions as well as wolf spiders. And it's amazing how many scorpions are around. There's plenty in the forest in Victoria as well as in the forest up here in the tropics. So most of the ones down in Victoria are going to be quite small, but as I said, they're not dangerous, so there's no harm in looking for them. And if you find one, have a good close look at it and leave it where it was. Okay, now that's it for the arachnids. Now we're going to move on to a group of animals that have a few more legs. So we've seen insects with 6 legs, we've seen arachnids with 8 legs, and before we leave the arachnids, actually, a few of the other groups, you might have heard of mites, ticks, and even things called harvestmen. So if you ever rolled a rock or a log over in your garden and seen this funny animal that bounces around with lots of legs that looks a little bit like a long leg spider but isn't, that's a harvestman. And one way to tell the harvestman from a daddy long leg spider is that the harvestman has 1 body part and the daddy long leg spider has 2 body parts. So they're also arachnids. What we're going to look at now are myriapods. Now, myriapods actually means many feet. So let's see what we've got. All right. This is one of them. And it's actually quite a stinky animal. And the reason it is because it's actually poisonous. It's a millipede. And you can see that liquid coming out? And on my hand here, that's a chemical they use to defend themselves. It smells awful and it's poisonous if you eat them. So it's not poisonous for me to handle at all, as long as I don't go and lick my hand afterwards. And it can't bite or do anything like that. But if you've ever found millipedes in Victoria, they're a small black one called the Portuguese millipede. And they really stink, and it's those poisons inside them that they use to stop other animals eating them that you're smelling. Now let's see if we can have a good look at these millipedes moving. Look at those legs. They've got amazing little legs. Each body segment has 2 pairs of legs. And you can see those legs just moving in and out there. How cool is that? It's going to, hopefully we'll go for a bit of a walk and we'll get to see them, because when they really start walking, those legs are a little bit hypnotic in the way they move. Just pop the other one on the log as well. I've got my head end and the tail end mixed up. It's pretty easy to do with millipedes. I was facing it the wrong way. There we go. So the one on top of the log's now moving really well. This one here. Here we go. There's those legs. Look at that. Look at the waves of legs moving through. How cool is that? Look at those little feet. I heard a funny joke about a millipede the other day being delayed because it was putting its shoes on. Imagine dealing. Oh, look at that. There's some mites. Now, mites live on. There's an arachnid living on a myriapod. Those mites are it's a little bit like fleas on a dog, but in the case of mites on a millipede, they don't harm the millipede. They actually work with it and keep it clean. So a healthy millipede always has a colony of healthy mites living on it. So that's invertebrates living together. Look at those waves of motion with the legs. So all coordinated, and that wave travels all the way along the body, right along the front. How's that? So that's pretty good. It's an all-terrain vehicle that can move through the undergrowth. And a little bit like the giant burrowing cockroach I spoke about before, these animals eat things that are rotting leaves, rotting wood, turn that into millipede poo, which is then recycling things, the nutrients to go back into the ground and help the forest grow. Now, in the myriapod group, there's also another member that we often mix up with millipedes, and that is this one, the centipede. Now, centipedes are a little bit different, and we'll look at why. Now, I'm just going to wake this one up. I think he's gone to sleep there for us. Okay. This is a giant centipede. Now, centipedes are venomous. That's a little different than the poison, because venom is something that is injected, and these are predators. They use their venom to catch their prey, just like a spider does. Now let's have a look at this big girl here. She's a monster, very big, and you can see that those legs are much larger than the Millipedes' legs, and they have a single claw on the edge of end of each foot. And right here, hopefully she'll show us. No, still moving around. She has big fangs, which we call Venom Claws, under her face. So if she settles just into good position, we might get to have a close look at those. There you go. There's her face. They got big, strong antennae and very big legs. Oh, right there, that orange patch is what we call a spiracle. That's how she breathes. So that's where the air goes in. So there's another one there, and they continue down the body. So they don't breathe through a mouth or a nose. It's through those spiracles that they get their oxygen. There you go. And you can see the eyes of the centipede at the front. If I can hold this still for you, sorry about all the movement. There you go. And you can see they've got more than 2 eyes. They can see 3 on this side of the face and the same on the other. So this is a giant rainforest centipede, and these will hunt animals on the forest floor. They're kind of like an insect or invertebrate freight train. They're rocketing through the undergrowth, and they specialize in catching spiders, particularly things like those tarantulas. They go down the hole, corner the spider at the bottom, and just eat it up. So the big tarantula I showed you before wouldn't stand a chance. I've got a couple of other centipedes to show you. Look at this one here. I'll just get focused on it. If I can. Go back to there. This is a beautiful red one, this one. Look at the colors there. So you can see the difference at a glance between centipedes and millipedes. The size of those legs. Sorry about the focus. We're getting it right now. And so 1 pair of legs per body segment, not 2 like the millipedes. That's running around now. I think we have a hungry one in another. Oh, I might try this one first, actually. I'll grab the again, we've got another little volunteer cricket. Sorry about this. Now these animals, no, that wasn't the correct one. Bear with me. Here we go. No, that one's not hungry. We might try another one. Okay, we'll just go back and... Now, centipedes have those great big antennae that they like to touch and feel things. So they're very good at smelling their way around. Now, we assume most animals smell with their nose. We do, other mammals, dogs, cats, we know that nose. But invertebrates typically smell with other things. And with the centipedes, it's with their antennae. That's how they pick up those smells. Now, we're just going to go to another one now. We'll see if this one's hungry at all.
Let's just focus first.
Okay. Just get our focus sorted out before we go to this one. This one's very active. There we go. That's better. All right, I'll just open the lid, which is easier said than done. Here we go. And we'll drop our cricket in. Don't know if that cricket was all that healthy. I'll try another one. We'll see what happens. The centipedes don't use their eyesight that much. So it relies on feeling other animals moving around. I'll just take that cricket out. Oh, he's going to walk around now too. Here we go. Let's see what happens with the... Oh, here we go. They are very fast, as you can see. And it can't climb smooth things, which is lucky for us. Otherwise, it'd be out of that enclosure like a shot. All happening. And unfortunately, it looks like neither of centipedes are going to perform for us today. So they both look like they're a little bit distracted by the lights and not by... Oh, right as I clicked that off, it actually grabbed the cricket. So there you go. So you can see it picked the cricket up. It's now carrying it around. So normally what they do to race back under a log or something like that and eat it in safety where they're not going to be caught by another predator. So there you go. So that's the... It can catch more than one. It could catch the second one, and it'll hold it further down under the other legs. So that's the Myriapods. So that means many, many feet. All right. Now, the last group of animals we're going to have a look at now have no legs and 1 foot. No legs and 1 foot. That sounds really, really odd. But I'm sure you're quite familiar with them. It's this wonderful little animal here, the snail. Now, this is one you might be used to in Victoria. It's called a garden snail. And these are actually from Europe, and so they become introduced to Australia all across southern Australia. We don't get them up here in the tropics. We get this one, the rainforest snail. So you can see that's a little bit bigger. The rainforest snails are massive. Let's just have a close look at both of these on the bug cam. Let's zoom right in this time. Look at that face. Look at that. You can see their heads. Their eyes are on stalks. These are amazing animals, and most of you will have snails in the backyard. So when next time you see one, have a close look because they're fascinating. So those eyes on the tips of the stalks are able to retract. So if the snail bumps into something with the eye pulls back inside out. It's kind of like if you pull a rubber glove off and the fingers turn inside out. That's kind of what happens with the snail's eyes. Same sort of thing. They can just pull them inside out. And that means they're not going to hurt their eyes. These ones have 4 stalks, but the eyes are only on the top 2. I'm just trying to get the dot. See the eye? See the dot right on the tip. So snails' eyes aren't all that good. They can see whether it's night or day, but they're not going to really recognize a human from a brick wall. But they can see enough to get by. The other fascinating thing about snails is that they have teeth. Most people don't realize that snails have teeth, but they have teeth all over their tongues. So when they're eating, they will rub this toothy tongue all over their food and break it up and pull it inside their mouths. Most snails eat vegetation. The garden snail, as we know, loves lettuce and things in people's gardens. Rainforest snails don't eat plants too much. They like to eat the algae just off logs and tree trunks, that sort of thing. And believe it or not, we actually have carnivorous snails up here in the tropics, which catch and eat other snails. So it's like a slow motion pursuit. They move by pulsing the muscles in that special foot. So that's what we call their foot, that belly. And I've got one here that we're about to have a look at. And we should be able to see this if we can get the angle on the glass right. There we go. And if this snail decides to start moving, we'll probably see those muscles pulsing. You see how it's gripped on? And behind the snail, that trail is made of mucus. Now, we all know that word associated with the stuff that comes out of our nose when we have a cold, but snails make it so they can move. All right, you can see the muscles pulsing now. See those waves running through the snail's body? That's the muscle pulsing that allows a snail to transfer its weight slowly from one end to the other and move along. So that's how they slide along. It's amazing. And some snails can travel quite quickly. And this one, like the garden snail, they're fairly slow paced, but we have fun with our snails. We actually have a snail race track on our website that you can actually buy as a snail racing kit. Allows you to work out how fast they go, but they're amazing animals. They can actually slide over the top of a razor blade and not cut themselves. So incredible, well protected by the mucus and needs to be moist. If it's not moist, snails can't be active. So that's why you get snails everywhere on a rainy night. Okay, well, that's it for the animals. What we're going to do now is have a bit of a question session. So if you've been popping your questions in, now's the time we'll try to answer those questions. So I think Xander's going to ask the questions. So hopefully some of you guys have asked some really great questions along the way. So let's see what we've got.
Beck has asked, how big can rainforest snails get?
Okay, great question. Was that Beck, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. How big can rainforest snails get? The one that I showed you was a grown-up, an adult. It was about that big, but there actually is a bigger one. The biggest in Australia is in southern Queensland, and it can get to about the size of a tennis ball, and it's called the panda snail. So that's the biggest in Australia. The biggest in the world is the giant African land snail, which has a more pointed shell that can have a shell about this big, and the snail itself can be that long, great big sloppy body, massive. And we sometimes get them coming into Australia on shipping crates. So quarantine officers do their best to try to keep them out of Australia because it could be like cane toads. They could get into the environment and cause lots of problems. Great question. What's up next?
Joni has asked, what sort of insect is a ladybug?
Right. Great question, Joni. A ladybug is a beetle. It belongs to the beetle group of insects. So it's a bit hard to see the three body parts from above because you've got that beetle shell. But those hard covers we talked about earlier with the golden stag of the rainbow stag beetle flip up, and they're actually hardened wings, like I said before. So if you want to look at the ladybug's body parts, or ladybird, some people call them, you need to flip it over and look from underneath. But it's a beetle. Good question. What else have we got?
Jane has asked, how many years can snails live for?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Generally, the biggest species of snails live longer. So some of the big ones could maybe live 10 years or so. I don't know if that's actually known for all species. Garden snails usually a few years. It takes them a couple of years, or it takes them a year about to get to a grown-up size. We grow them up here and they start off tiny. So all snails lay eggs, and the eggs start off like tiny little soft white balls, and then they hatch as tiny little snails, and they get bigger and bigger gradually. Their shell just keeps on extending out in a spiral, growing at the end, going around that way. They don't drop their shells off. They can't drop their shells, and they can't survive if their shell has been taken off them. So big species of snails like the rainforest snails, maybe up to around about 10 years. Okay. Any other questions?
Charlotte? Yeah, Charlotte was wondering, are redback spiders poisonous?
Right, very good question, Charlotte. Are they poisonous? And before, when I was talking about poison in the millipede, technically what we say is spiders are venomous, not poisonous. The redback spider is venomous, so it has venom. So if it bites into us, the venom is strong enough to actually kill people. But no one has died from a redback spider since before 1956. That's a very long time ago. Okay, so these days, we don't really have much to worry about with redback spiders. Now, before I asked about which spiders were dangerous, the redback is one that we consider is dangerous, even though no one dies of redback spider bite anymore in Australia. Good question. What's next?
Another question was, what insect is most popular?
Oh, most popular. You know what? In terms of, I'll show you the one that's most popular. Now, we actually breed a lot of insects as educational pets, so people can enjoy and learn about these animals at home. This one, the spiny leaf insect, is one of the most popular we have. More recently, we've been breeding tarantulas, and they're pretty popular too, but they're of course not an insect. But in terms of insects, as pets, this is most popular. But in terms of which is most popular all over the world, in terms of an insect that people like, it could be, a lot of people like ladybugs. A lot of people like praying mantises because they're really cool, and they also catch and eat a lot of what people call pest insects. So in terms of what insects people really like, I think the praying mantis is one of the top ones as well. Good question.
Lynn, how many eggs can a tiger huntsman lay?
How many eggs that's a fantastic question. How many eggs can a tiger huntsman lay? They lay around about somewhere between 150 and 200 eggs. And they lay it in a white silk sack that Deanna, who's right on the ball, has just passed me. Okay, so this is an egg sack. And I'll just flick to the camera too there. You can see this is already hatched. So that little tear there is where all the baby spiders have come out. And those little fluffy bits on top are the baby spider exoskeletons. So they shed their outer skeleton as soon as they're coming out of or while they're in the egg sac, actually, before they emerge from it. So most huntsman spiders can lay somewhere beyond 50 eggs and somewhere up to a couple of hundred. We have one kind called a golden huntsman, which we've had lay over 200, maybe 300 eggs. And their egg sac is actually quite big, and that golden huntsman can be about this big in leg span. Excellent question. What do we got next?
Lisa was wondering, what is the largest snail in the world?
Largest snail, was it?
Yes.
Was it? Yes, largest snail. I answered that one before, which was the giant African land snail. So that's the largest. There are some pretty big snails underwater, but in terms of on land, it's the giant African land snail is the largest.
Steve McFlaren was wondering, is a slug a snail without its shell?
Very good. We often get that one too. No, they're actually different animals. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, snails can't lose their shell. They don't change it like hermit crabs. So if you see a slug, it's a slug. It's a completely different species. And there's actually a group of animals we call semi-slugs, and we find them up in the rainforest around here. They're actually slugs with a little shell on their back, but the shell's too small for them to get back into. So it's kind of like halfway. They've evolved halfway between a snail and the slug, and we're looking at a snapshot in time. But they're different animals. They're not a snail without a shell, although they are relatives, and they're very similar to snails in many ways, just without the shell. Yeah.
Another question was, how do you catch all these bugs?
Right, good question. How do we catch them all? Okay, what we do is we'll catch a few and then breed them. So we don't go out all the time catching animals out of the wild. We don't believe that's the right thing to do. So what we do is breed them here at Minibeast Wildlife. So we've got breeding programs for all sorts of things, whether it's the cockroaches, beetles, various beetles, spiders, scorpions, centipedes. Most of the things you saw today, we breed here at Minibeast Wildlife. So when we have to when we look for them originally, we go out, we do a bit of research, find out where they live, and then we'll go out to the forest, usually at night, and just simply look for them. And that's what I love. I've been doing that since I was in Scouts as a young boy, running around forest and looking at bugs. It's a great thing to do, and I love doing it now. So I've got my dream job.
I think this is the last question. How long do butterflies live for?
How long? That's a good question. That varies a lot. Some butterflies only live a couple of days, and some can live for many weeks. So it depends on the butterfly. So some of them will really just emerge and they flutter around, try to find their mates, and it's a matter of several days. Even moths are similar in that way. And some moths actually come out without mouth parts. They can't even eat. So all their feeding is done as a caterpillar, and it's much the same as a butterfly. They eat lots as a caterpillar, and then they pop out as the adult, and the adult is looking to breed. But with butterflies, they feed on nectar. So do some moths, but some moths don't eat at all, and it's only a very, very short lifespan for them. And they lay their eggs, and then a couple of days later, it's all over. So another good question. One other thing I was going to do was talk about myths, and I thought some of them might have popped up in our questions, but I'll just go through a couple because there's many myths in the invertebrate world. One about the daddy long-legged spider we often hear, and that is that it's really, really dangerous or very, very venomous, but it can't bite through our skin. That's not true at all. Daddy long-legs are completely harmless spiders. They have venom, but their venom is mild. They actually can bite through their skin, our skin, if they really try, but they're not dangerous at all. So we don't really know where that myth came from. Not true at all. Another big one, which is very big in Victoria, is about the white-tailed spider, and that it is a dangerous spider and has dangerous venom. Again, not true at all, and all that came from a horrible current affairs program back in the 1990s. White-tailed spider bites don't cause any problems. If people have welts and things or skin that's being eaten away and someone else says, oh, that's a white-tailed spider bite, they're actually not correct. And doctors can't diagnose white-tailed spider bites from any other spider bite or from a pinprick for that matter. So that's another big bug myth we often get. Has anyone, Xander, written down any of the other venomous spiders? Or any guesses of which the other venomous spiders might have been, or really dangerous spiders we have in Australia? No one on that list has guessed that one?
No, I'm not.
No, okay. The other major one was the Sydney funnel web, if anyone was thinking about that. So the Sydney funnel web is the other spider in Australia that has killed people in the past, but no one has died from Sydney funnel web bites since before 1980. So again, going back. So spiders aren't really dangerous creatures at all anymore in Australia. We know a lot of the overseas tourists are worried about coming here because of our spiders. We know a lot of people are worried about going camping because of our spiders. But really, the most dangerous thing about camping is driving there. So spiders aren't a problem at all. Okay, I'll hand you back to Xander because I think we're just about done now.
I'd just like to say thank you for giving us some of your time and answering the questions that our viewers have asked.
No worries. It's been my pleasure, and I've had a great time doing it.
I'd also like to say thank you for everyone to joining us, and I hope everyone has a relaxing and fun holiday. We'll be back with Scout Quest live events next term, but in the meantime, you might want to check out the Outdoor Challenge at scoutsvictoria.com.au/quest. We should love to see more submissions, and if you're not a scout, that's okay, you can still participate too. Although Scouts is free until March, so you may as well try it out. Have a great day and enjoy your holidays. Bye.
Excellent.